everyone, welcome back to my channel. As always, thank you so much for being here and sharing your time with me. I really appreciate it. I'm torn between starting this video with an apology for being gone a month again. But frankly, I feel like it just makes it worse if I give you excuses as opposed to just being like, you know what guys, I needed the time. And doing it that way instead of being like, I'm so sorry because I had to do what I had to do, you know what I'm saying? However, I do want to briefly touch upon a deterrent in filming videos, which is important simply because I feel like there might be other people out there that resonate with this. And I knew this was going to be an issue when I first decided to start filming YouTube videos because I have been struggling with acne since I was 9 years old. And I feel like it's very easy to hide that with my videos because if my skin is doing really well, I'll record a video. If it's not, I won't record a video. And my skin has really been going through it this past month. And I know that recording something while my skin isn't doing well, I can notice that there's a difference in my facial expression, how confident I am in front of the camera, because I can feel myself like kind of, you know, like hiding a bit, tucking away when my skin isn't doing too well. And I don't want to do that, especially when it's out of my control. Like I take so much care of my skin and I do so much research in order to nurture it and, you know, care for it as much as I can. But, you know, it's just a thing that I've always struggled with and I'm on a seemingly endless journey in order to figure it out, but I'm trying to be patient. I don't want to allow it to keep preventing me from doing the things that make me happy. So I thought I would record this video today anyway and mention it at the beginning of the video because it almost feels like I can, you know, like break down that facade where I have to be like this porcelain girl on the camera, which I'm so very far from it. So maybe one video you'll be like, oh, she's a bit sporty today, although I know a lot of people don't even realize. And then another day you'll be like, oh, her skin's so clear, yay, it's a good skin day. But yeah, I wanted to mention it because when I see people with acne, that does not change their beauty whatsoever. So I don't know why I let it affect how beautiful I see myself. It's just such an irritating thing because I'm like, why can't I see myself the way I see other people? So if someone's watching this and they struggle with acne or any sort of skin condition that makes them feel self-conscious or like that determines their self-worth, please know that it doesn't. We are so much more than our external appearance. In fact, that's the least important thing, is how you look externally. So yeah, I just wanted to mention that because I think sometimes it's nice to hear that other people are rooting for you. I'm rooting for you if you're going through something like this. As cheesy as it is, you're beautiful. And yeah, screw acne. I'm not gonna let it get in the way of my YouTube videos. Okay, let's do it. Today I'm gonna talk about the books that I've been reading lately. I have not, is my mug in the way? I have not been reading too much lately. I'm trying to be more mindful in my consumption of what I'm reading, simply because I am rather busy. So instead of beating myself up over the fact that I'm not reading as much as I did last year, I'm just reading books that I'm really excited to read and hoping that that will kind of counteract each other. And my brain will be like, hey, you're not reading as much as you did last year, but you're reading books that make you really happy. You know what I'm saying? So that's the current journey I'm on. So I believe I only have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 books. 6 here and then a 7th one that I read that I don't have a physical copy of. So yes, 7 books we will be chatting about today. Let's get into it. These are in no particular order. This is 100% not in order of how I've been reading them, so ignore that. The first one I will be talking about is City of Girls by Elizabeth Gilbert. I've mentioned this before. Eat, Pray, Love is one of my favorite books. It is a comfort movie as well, and everyone has recommended this book. Truly, so many people in my life have been like, please read City of Girls. So, without further ado, I did, and I really enjoyed it. I can totally understand why it is such a beloved book. It is very complex, it is layered, it is filled with such interesting characters. There's definitely a large cast, but each character adds value to the story. It doesn't feel like filler characters. They all definitely play a role and they all have a specific story and background and input that they're there to serve and provide, which is lovely. I went into this not knowing too much, so I kind of feel like that's probably the best for you as well. Essentially, all I knew going into this is that the narrator of the book is 89 years old, and she is writing a letter to someone. Let me explain it this way. There's this woman that writes to the narrator saying, what was my dad to you, or what did my dad mean to you, or who were you to my dad, something along those lines. And she responds with this thorough letter of her entire life to explain what her dad meant to her. Does that make sense? Think How I Met Your Mother, but not exactly. But that kind of general idea, where if you break it down to its core concepts, it doesn't make sense. Because if my parent took, how many seasons are there in How I Met Your Mother? Like 5 or 6. If they took 6 seasons worth of storytelling to tell me how they met my mom, I'd be like, wrap it up, sir. Similarly to if a lady sent, a letter this big just to explain what she was to your dad, you'd be like, really, ma'am? Really? So don't analyze it like that. Just, take it for what it is. Enjoy the ride. It is very interesting. Since it takes place mainly in the 40s, it is a very enveloping story, similarly to how Jane Austen makes me feel, that I just feel like I'm in that time period. I'm wearing the clothes, wearing the garments, dressed up to the nines. To the nines? Is that the expression? We know I'm not good with expressions, so we'll move on. I just thought it was a really, really wonderful, immersive read. And that's always a fun time, especially when you're looking for a nice little distraction. And there are also really touching things that happen throughout her retelling of her life. So it's both entertaining and touching, so it's got a nice little balance of it. So that's City of Girls. Then I'm going to talk about one that's kind of a cheat because I haven't technically finished it. I have a fourth of the book left and I've been trying to read it for months, okay, plural. And that is Gullivers Travels by Jonathan Swift. That's his name, right? Yes, it is. This was my book club pick for April. Every person that was reading it struggled with it. My friend Veronica listened to the abridged version, so she was definitely the smarter one out of all of us. I've been sticking to the full version and hoping that my little illustrated copy of it will make it more bearable. But none of you told me what a bizarre journey I was in for. No one warned me. And I feel kind of cheated. Mind you, I didn't pick this one. This was not my pick or Veronica's pick. So I have not enjoyed this. It's just so bizarre. There are aspects that I appreciate, but as a whole, I'm like, this is not what I want in my life, nor what I need. So I'm barely treading through it, okay? I am just like that, you know what I'm saying? When it's that difficult to get through. Similarly to what Memorial made me feel. And we know that was a brutal go. So yeah, that's Gullivers Travels. Haven't technically finished it, but I won't talk about it again. This is the extent of what I will talk about of this book. So I thought I would mention it now. Then I have Swimming in the Dark. Last time I absolutely butchered his name. And as someone who lives in an English-speaking country but has a Spanish name, I know the troubles of that. I know that when I'm like, hi, my name's Alejandra, people are like, Alejandra, right on. And I'm like, not quite. So I don't want to do this man that same, disservice. So I asked my sweet friend Veronica, I've mentioned her 5 times in this video already, because she is from Poland. So I will insert the little voice note of her saying this author's name so that we can all learn to pronounce it together.
Tomasz Jędrowski. I'm over enunciating. Normally you would say Tomasz Jędrowski.
Okay, point being, if you like Call Me By Your Name, I think you will definitely enjoy this book. It takes place during communist Poland, and it is a love story between 2 men. So it is definitely a hard one to read. It's not tragedy after tragedy, but it's so difficult to read a love story that takes place in a time and in a country that doesn't fully support it. Those things just really, really eat away at me. But that being said, it is a very poignant, you know the word I'm trying to say, I just don't for whatever reason, can't think of how to say it. I do think it's very wonderfully written. The way he describes the scenery and the things that they're experiencing, like the little trips that they go on and the little escapes that they live in order to be in love and be able to express their love without the concern of their government and society judging them or harming them, is really beautifully written, and you feel like you're there with them. Like there's this whole camping scene where they swim in the dark, and it's just so pure, and it just, like, I was smirking as I read it because it's just such like an authentic description of falling in love and being in love. And I think it's important in the sense that for those people that for whatever reason have some sort of issue with same-sex relationships, I think it's a great story in the way it represents love and how love looks the same for everyone, because love is love. What a cliche, but the fact that some people still need to understand this is beyond me. Regardless, I think he does this beautifully. And a note on the author, which I think is absolutely brilliant. His first language, I believe, is Polish, but he speaks so very many languages. But he writes in English because he feels like a deep connection to the English language, and it's like his own language that he learned on his own, as opposed to Polish being the result of being taught it from his parents. So I think it's really interesting that he chooses to write in English, and that's like the language that he chooses to express his vision and his literature through. That's just a little fun fact about the author. So yeah, I really, really enjoyed it. The next book I want to talk about, which I don't really want to talk about because I feel like I should just be able to say everyone should read this book and everyone should read this book. Mind you, there are a certain group of people who shouldn't read this book because it is an extremely sensitive topic, and I'm sure not everyone is in a stage where they can handle such a topic being discussed, because it does deal with sexual assault and the process of going through trial for it. So to put it very briefly, there was the Stanford case where Brock Turner was going through trial for sexually assaulting someone, but this person was only known as Emily Doe. Her identity was not revealed until this book was released. Chanel Miller released this memoir reclaiming her name because for years and years and years she was undergoing like extreme scrutiny from the public, but no one actually knew who she was. So she was the only person that was like absorbing all this judgment and input on her life and her story and her trauma, yet no one knew who she was. So this is kind of like her reclaiming her name, reclaiming her story. And it is an absolute masterpiece. Like I'm trying to be very cautious with the words that I use because it is such a horrible thing to have to write about. Like the fact that she went through that and then this story had to be, like that story had to be reclaimed, like to begin with, is horrible. But the fact that she was strong enough and brave enough and so courageous, and I can't think of more synonyms, to create this and put it out into the world, where I am so certain it has helped millions of individuals go through similar situations. It just genuinely makes me want to cry. Like I just think it's okay. Anyway, I think it's phenomenal. Anyway, the content of this book set aside, Chanel Miller is a phenomenal writer. She's so incredibly talented, and I look forward to the day she decides to release another piece of writing. I will read anything she comes out with because I was absolutely enamored and completely compelled by the way that she writes. This is just the beginning. I think this was just something that she needed. What she explains, it was something that she needed to release and reclaim in order to move forward with her talents and her abilities. Okay, I'm just gonna blabber on. You get what I'm saying. It is a phenomenal, phenomenal book. I recommend anyone that is able to to read it. Then I read The Duchess of Bloomsbury Street. I read this book all the way back in April. I feel like I've said enough on this. 84 Charing Cross Road is one of my favorite books of all time, and this is the sequel to that. Helene Hanff has such a special place in my heart. She is so wonderful, so talented. I don't know, for whatever reason, she is unmatched for me. I just think she is the cream of the absolute crop. I love it, I love it, I love it. If I was stranded on a desert island and I could only take 3 books, 2 of those books would be 84 Charing Cross Road and this one, because she makes me laugh, she makes me cry, she makes me happy, she makes me sad, she makes me every emotion possible in such like a succinct piece of work. And I think it takes a specific talent to be able to do so. So yeah, I loved it, I loved it. I cannot recommend her enough. Oh, and speaking of English culture, books on England, etc., etc., Mateo Artis, if you're watching this video is dedicated to you. Kisses from here all the way to the countryside of England. And if your mom's watching this, scrap the fact that this video is dedicated to you, it's actually dedicated to your mom. So anyway, the last book I'm going to talk about is Kitchen by Banana Yoshimoto. I was recommended this book by a lovely subscriber, I think like on my first or second video, and she had mentioned that she thought I would really enjoy it, and she was correct. I did really enjoy it. However, this book is split into 2 short stories. The first one is called Kitchen. The second one is called Moonlight Shadow, if I remember correctly. Boop, boop, boop. Moonlight Shadow. I personally preferred Moonlight Shadow simply because it discusses death and dying, and I have mentioned that before, I believe, on this channel, probably multiple times. That is a topic that I am extremely interested in. I think specifically for those of us in Western culture, it's very easy to kind of be detached from the process of death and dying, coming to terms with our impermanence, and also understanding the process of mourning and how it looks different to different people is really, really interesting, and that was very much analyzed within Moonlight Shadow. And it made me cry. I was extremely touched by the story. I had a bit of a qualm with the first story, which is Kitchen, because I am in a truly perpetual battle with the trope of romantic love curing all. When the main character or a character in the book is going through a lot emotionally, mentally, and physically, and then this boy or this girl or whoever comes in and fixes everything because they fall in love, I think that's so lame, and it's a horrible thing to teach people that romantic love solves all. That's not the case at all. Romantic love is wonderful and powerful and magical when the time is right. I think we often overlook the work that needs to be done within, and we kind of just paint over it with romantic love, and I do think that's a disservice to ourselves and to your partner. So I could go on a tangent about that topic and death and dying, so I'll spare you and lock it up there. Obviously, some of the language is outdated. This was written in the 80s. You know, keep that in mind when you read it. Some things I was like, oh, not sure about the language, but regardless, I really, really enjoyed it. And those are all the books I have been reading lately. So I'm sorry if this is a different frame altogether, but I forgot to talk about one book that I have also been reading, and that is Interior Chinatown by Charles Yu. This book is very uniquely written. The style is unlike any other book I've read, actually. It's written as if it were a film script, and the main point of the book, as opposed to me explaining the premise, because I think it's kind of interesting to go into it without knowing too much, but it essentially highlights the inequalities that Asian Americans go through on a daily basis, but it specifically focuses on the injustices within the film industry and how Asian Americans are constantly put in this box. Specifically, like the Karate Kid trope, you know, like you become it's like the Kung Fu master, and that's supposed to be like the peak of your success, when in fact there should be room for Asian Americans to have a normal role and it not be like the byproduct of their culture. Do you know what I mean? Like, it doesn't, kung fu master, that's not their only identity. That's not the only thing that they can bring to the table, and that's not the only thing that they can, you know, that's not the only role that they can fulfill in the film industry. But there's this massive gap in that industry that anyone other than like a white movie star can fill all these roles and can have such complex characters, but the moment it's an Asian actor, he's reduced to a kung fu master being the pinnacle of his success. Or if you're a woman, it's just like this pretty Asian lady. So anyway, it was very interesting to read on it and reflect on it, because in the media that we consume, I feel like oftentimes we don't stop to consider the damage that this is doing, because it perpetuates these ideas that Asian American actors can only fulfill one role, which is so inaccurate and so goddamn outdated. So for those reasons, I thought it was a very important and also entertaining read. Yeah, that was Interior Chinatown. I suggest you pick it up. It was a thumbs up from me. Also, I'm not really reading books anymore. I haven't been essentially in all of 2021, because what does it even mean, love? Like, let's be honest. My accent, we need to cut this out. Yeah, ratings are tough. I think it's just easier if I tell you how I'm feeling about it. And I think that speaks volumes as opposed to a number, because I feel like a number also depends on how I'm feeling in that moment. So anyway, that was the little addition that I forgot to mention in the previous clip. Okay, back to the other me, or the outro, or whatever it is that we're doing next. Thank you to everyone for your endless patience and continuing to tune in even when I disappear for long periods of time. Also, I was made aware that there are 1,000 of you, or I think over 1,000 of you, which is so bizarre. That is more than the people that were in my high school, which is a weird thing to wrap my head around. I'm in like a very deep state of gratitude lately, even more than I usually am, and I've been kind of emotional. And this little milestone is obviously something that adds to that gratitude, because it's very cool that I can talk about something that I'm so passionate about, and some of you want to hear it and watch. So yes, thank you from the bottom of my heart. Thank you as always for sharing your time with me, and I will see